Welcome to Raw Tales Africa. Before we begin today's incredible tale of justice and redemption, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because stories like this need to be heard by everyone. The convoy of black SUVs rolled through the dusty streets of Ogbomoso like a storm cloud heavy with thunder. Inside the lead vehicle, Honorable Commissioner Adefemi Ogundimu adjusted his agbada and stared at the modest buildings lining the road. So, this is where the new governor wants to meet, he muttered to his aide. Some god-forsaken community hall in the middle of nowhere. His phone buzzed with another threatening message from his creditors. The man who had once been untouched, who had seized lands and destroyed lives without consequence, now trembled as shadows. 3 months of sleepless nights had aged him a decade. The vehicle stopped in front of a simple community center. Hundreds of people had gathered: farmers, market women, students, elders, all watching with curious eyes. Commissioner Ogudimu stepped out, his security detail forming a tight circle around him. Where is he? Ogundimu demanded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the morning breeze. Where is this so-called governor who thinks he can summon me like a common criminal? A voice echoed from the community hall speaker, calm but carrying the weight of authority that made everyone fall silent. Commissioner Ogudimu, after 23 years, we meet again. The commissioner's blood turned to ice. That voice, it couldn't be. The boy had disappeared. The family had been destroyed. This was impossible. You remember me, don't you? The voice continued. The son of Baba Kende, the farmer whose land you stole. The boy you saw would never amount to anything. From the crowd, cameras began recording. Phones were raised. The commissioner's legs began to shake. Today, I keep a promise I made to my father on his deathbed. Today, justice come home. But this story, this story started 23 years ago when a poor young farmer named Tunde Adebowale made a decision that would change everything. 23 years earlier, the sun was just breaking over the rolling hills of Ogbomoso when Baba Kehinde stepped onto his farmland, breathing in the rich scent of earth and possibility. At 55, his hands were weathered like cold leather, but his eyes still sparkled with the dreams of a man who believed in tomorrow. Tunde, he called out to his 17-year-old son, who was already bent over a row of yam mounds. Remember what I always tell you. Tunde looked up, wiping sweat from his brow, and recited the familiar words with a smile. The land doesn't just feed the body, Bami. It feeds the soul, the family, and the future. Exactly, Kende nodded, pride swelling in his chest. This land has been in our family for 4 generations. Your great grandfather cleared these fields with his bare hands. Your grandfather built the first irrigation channels. I've spent 30 years making it prosperous. The Adebowale farm was modest by some standards: 12 acres of prime agricultural land, but it was their world. Kinde grew the finest yams in 3 local government areas. His vegetables fed half the community. Market women traveled from as far as Ilorin to buy his produce because they knew Baba Kende's crops were blessed by honest sweat and genuine care. But what really set their farm apart wasn't just the quality of the harvest, it was the generosity of the harvest owner. Every season, Kende would set aside a portion of his crops for widows who couldn't afford to buy food. During drought years, he opened his wells to neighboring farmers free of charge. When young people in the community wanted to learn modern farming techniques, his farm became their school. Money comes and goes, he would say, but kindness plants seeds that grow forever. Tunde had inherited more than his father's farming skills. The boy was brilliant, the kind of intelligence that shone like a beacon in their rural community. At 17, he had already passed his WAEC examinations with distinction and earned a scholarship to study agricultural economics at the University of Ibadan. I'm going to take everything you have taught me, Bami, Tunde said that morning, gesturing across their thriving fields, and I am going to make it bigger. I want to help farmers across Nigeria improve their lives. Kende smiled, but there was worry in his eyes. He had heard rumors in the market, whispers about government officials hiring private lands for development projects. He had seen what happened in neighboring communities, families displaced overnight, their ancestral homes bulldozed for shopping malls that never got built. Just promise me one thing, my son, Kehinde said quietly. Whatever you become in life, never forget where you came from. Never forget the people who shaped you. And if someone ever tries to take what belongs to us, fight for it with everything you have. Tunde nodded solemnly. He had no idea that within 3 months, he would be tested on that promise in ways that would break his heart and forge his destiny. That same morning, in a gleaming office in the state capital, a very different kind of man was making very different plans. Commissioner Adefemi Ogundimu lounged behind his mahogany desk, his belly straining against an expensive senator's outfit. At 42, he had never worked a day of honest labor in his life. Born into a political family, he had climbed the ranks through connections, corruption, and calculated cruelty. His walls were lined with photographs, him shaking hands with governors, him cutting ribbons at project launches, him receiving awards for community development. But the only community Ogundimu had ever developed was his own bank account. Sir, his head knocked and entered. I have the survey report you requested. Ogundimu opened the file eagerly. For months, he had been searching for prime agricultural land to seize under the guise of a government development project. The plan was simple: identify valuable private property, create fake documentation claiming it for the state, compensate owners with a fraction of the land's worth, then sell it to foreign investors at enormous profits. His eyes lit up as he read. Adebowale Farm, Ogbomoso, 12 acres of highly fertile land with established irrigation. Current market value 50 million naira. Owner Kehinde Adebowale, subsistence farmer. Perfect. Ogundimu smiled coldly. A simple farmer, no political connections, no powerful family to fight back. Easy target. He had no idea that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in October. Kende was in his fields when he saw a convoy of government vehicles approaching his farm. His stomach tightened with instinctive fear, but he wiped his hands on his wrapper and walked forward to meet them. Commissioner Ogundimu stepped out of the lead car like a man who owned the world. He was followed by 6 armed policemen, 2 government surveyors, and a nervous-looking clerk clutching a briefcase. Are you Kehinde Adebowale? Ogundimu's voice carried the arrogance of absolute power. Yes, sir. This is my farm. How can I help you? Ogundimu laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Help me? Oh, old man, you have it backwards. I am here to help you. He gestured broadly at the thriving farmland. The state government has decided to develop this area. We are building a modern agricultural processing plants that will benefit the entire community. You should be grateful. Kende's heart began to raise. Sir, I don't understand. This is my family's land. We have farmed here for 4 generations. Not anymore, Ogundimu said, nodding to his clerk, who pulled out a thick folder. This land has been designated for compulsory acquisition under the Land Use Act. Here are your compensation papers. The clerk handed Kehinde a document. His hands shook as he read the figure. 2 million naira. 2 million? Kehinde's voice cracked. Sir, this land is worth 25 times that amount. My yam harvest alone brings in more than 2 million naira each year. Ogundimu's expression hardened. Are you questioning the government's valuation? Old man, are you saying we don't know how to assess property? Sir, please. Kehinde fell to his knees, his pride crumbling in the face of desperation. This farm is everything to me. It is how I feed my family. It is how I pay my son's school fees. Please, I beg you, reconsider. The sight of the dignified farmer on his knees seemed to amuse Ogundimu. He smiled and turned to his men. Look at this. The farmer thinks he can negotiate with the government. Laughter rippled through the entourage, but Kehinde wasn't finished. Sir, if you must take this land, please give me fair compensation. My son is in university. He is brilliant. It will help with your agricultural projects. Maybe there is a way we can work together. Ogundimu's amusement turned to irritation. Work together? You think you and your bush boy can work with the state government? Old man, you don't understand your place in this world. He stepped colder, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Let me explain something to you. I am Commissioner Adefemi Ogundimu. I have the governor's ear. I control millions in state funds. When I speak, local government chairmen jump. When I decide something, it happens. He pointed at Kehinde with a manicured finger. You are nobody. A dirty farmer who grows vegetables. Your son is nobody. Another village boy who will probably drop out of school and end up driving Okada. You have no power, no connections, no future. Kehinde's eyes filled with tears, but he forced himself to stand. Sir, you may have power, but this land belongs to my family. I will not accept 2 million naira for property worth 50 million naira. Ogundimu's face darkened like a storm cloud. You will not accept. You will not accept. He turned to his policemen. Officers, this man is refusing to cooperate with a government directive. That sounds like an obstruction of justice to me. The policeman stepped forward, but Kehinde raised his hands. I am not obstructing anything. I am just asking for fairness. Fairness. Ogundimu laughed bitterly. Let me tell you about fairness, old man. Fairness is what I say it is. You have 72 hours to accept this compensation and vacate the land. If you don't, we'll classify you as a squatter and remove you by force. He leaned in close enough that Kehinde could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the stench of corruption. And if you or that university boy of yours try to fight this in court, I'll make sure you both disappear. Do you understand me? Kehinde's hands clenched into fists, but he nodded. He understood perfectly. He was facing a man with no conscience, no mercy, and unlimited power. As the convoy drove away, leaving clouds of dust over his precious crops. Kende fell to his knees again, not in supplication this time, but in despair. How could he tell his son that their family's legacy was about to be destroyed by a corrupt politician's greed? That evening, when Tunde returned from university for the weekend, he found his father sitting under their old mango tree, staring at legal papers with tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. Bami, what is wrong? Kende looked up at his brilliant son, his pride, his hope, his future, and felt his heart shatter. They want to take our land today. They want to take everything. As Tunde read the government documents, his hands began to shake with a rage that would burn inside him for the next 23 years. But more than rage, he felt a burning determination that would eventually reshape the entire political landscape of their state. That night, father and son sat under the stars, planning their first battle against injustice. They had no idea it would be their last night together as a family. The next morning, Kende made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Despite the fear gnawing at his stomach, he would not surrender without a fight. If we are going to lose everything, he told Tunde, at least we'll lose it with our dignity intact. Their first stop was the local government secretariat in Ogbomoso. Kende, dressed in his best agbada, carried a folder containing his certificate of occupancy, his tax receipts, and documentation proving 4 generations of his family's ownership. The local government chairman, a thin man named Alhaji Musa, received them in his office with obvious discomfort. He kept glancing at his phone and checking his watch. Baba Kende, Alhaji Musa said nervously, I've heard about your situation. I want to help you, but this directive came from the state level. There is nothing I can do. Sir, Tunde spoke for the first time, his voice respectful but firm. We are not asking you to oppose the state government. We are just asking for due process. If they want to acquire the land, let them follow proper procedures and pay fair compensation. Alhaji Musa shook his head sadly. Young man, you don't understand how these things work. When Commissioner Ogunimu wants something, he gets it. The best thing your father can do is take the money and find another piece of land. With 2 million naira, Kende's voice rose slightly. Sir, where can I find 12 acres of prime farmland for 2 million naira? That money won't even buy me 2 acres of bush. Before Alhaji Musa could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and his face went pale. Excuse me, he said, stepping into an adjoining room to take the call. Through the thin walls, they could hear fragments of the conversation. Yes, sir, I understand, sir. No, I haven't encouraged them. Yes, sir, I will handle it, sir, immediately. When he returned, Alhaji Musa's demeanor had completely changed. His earlier sympathy was replaced by cold officiousness. Baba Kende, I think this meeting is over. You have 72 hours to comply with the government directive. I suggest you use that time wisely. As he left the office, Kende and Tunde could feel eyes watching them from every corner. Word had spread quickly that the farmer was fighting Commissioner Ogundimu's land grab. Their next stop was the office of Barrister Adebisi, the most respected lawyer in Ogbomoso, a man in his 60s who had built his reputation on fighting for the common people. Baba Kehinde, Barrister Adebisi said after reviewing their documents, "You have a strong case. Your land ownership is properly documented. The government's compensation offer is clearly inadequate. We can file an injunction to stop the acquisition pending proper valuation. Hope flickered in Kende's eyes for the first time in days. You mean we can fight this? We can try, the lawyer said carefully. But I must warn you, Commissioner Ogundimu has a reputation for ruthlessness. He doesn't fight fair and he has powerful friends. We'll take that risk, Tunde said immediately. We can't let him steal our family's legacy. That afternoon, they filed the papers at the High Court in Oyo. As they walked down the courthouse steps, Kende felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Maybe the system would work. Maybe justice would prevail. The feeling lasted exactly 18 hours. The next morning, Barrister Adebisi called them with a shaking voice. Baba Kende, I am sorry. I have to withdraw from your case. What? Why? Last night, someone broke into my office. They destroyed my files and left a message on my desk. Drop the farmer's case or join him in the ground. This morning, I received a call from the Chief Judge's office. My practicing license is under review for irregularities in my tax payments. Kende felt the walls spinning around him. Sir, please, you are our only hope. I am sorry, Barrister Adebisi whispered. I have a family to protect. I can't help you anymore. The phone went dead. That same morning, Commissioner Ogundimu was in his office, smiling with satisfaction as his aide briefed him on the night's activities. The lawyer has been neutralized, sir. The local government chairman is fully cooperative and has spoken to 3 other lawyers in the area. None of them will touch this case. Good, Ogundimu said. What about the farmer and his son? Our informants said they are still planning to resist. The boy has been making inquiries about filing a complaint with EFCC. Ogundimu's smile widened. As he now? Interesting. It seems the university boy needs a more direct lesson about the way power works in the States. That evening, as Tunde walked home from a friend's house where he had been researching legal options online, 3 men emerged from the shadows. They wore no uniforms, carried no identification, but their message was crystal clear. The beating was swift and brutal. They broke 2 of his ribs, blackened both eyes, and left him bleeding in a ditch by the roadside. As he lay there, gasping for breath and spitting blood, one of the men knelt beside him and whispered, "This is just a warning, university boy. Tell your father to take the money and disappear. Next time, we won't be so gentle." Kende found his son 3 hours later and carried him home, weeping like he hadn't wept since his wife's death 5 years earlier. They did this because of me, Kende said, gently cleaning Tunde's wounds. Because I wouldn't accept their offer. Tunde grabbed his father's wrist with surprising strength. No, Bami, they did this because they are evil, and evil only wins when good people surrender. Despite his pain, despite the fear that now lived in both their hearts, they continued to fight. Commissioner Ogundimu's patience had run out. On the 3rd day after his ultimatum, he arrived at the Adebowale farm with a very different entourage. This time, he brought bulldozers. Kende stood in front of his house, Tunde beside him despite his injuries as the massive machines rumbled toward their home. A crowd of neighbors had gathered, but they kept their distance. Everyone knew what happened to people who opposed Commissioner Ogundimu. Last chance, old man, Ogundimu called out from behind his wall of security. Take the money and live peacefully, or watch us tear down everything you have built. This is illegal, Tunde shouted. his voice cracking with emotion. You can't destroy private property without due process. Ogundimu laughed. Due process? Boy, I am due process in this state. I am the law. He turned to the bulldozer operators. Begin demolition. The machines lurched forward, their steel blades gleaming in the afternoon sun. Kende closed his eyes, unable to watch as the first blade hit into the wall of his family home. But then, something unexpected happened. Stop! The voice belonged to Mama Folake, an elderly woman who sold vegetables in the local market. She stepped out of the crowd, her walking stick raised defiantly. I said, stop! The bulldozer operator, confused, looked back at Commissioner Ogundimu for guidance. Move that old woman out of the way. Ogundimu ordered the security. But as they stepped forward, more voices joined Mama Falake's. Stop this wickedness. Leave Baba Kehinde alone. This is not right. One by one, the neighbors who had been watching in fearful silence began to step forward. Market women, farmers, mechanics, students, people who had benefited from Kehinde's generosity over the years. They formed a human chain between the bulldozers and the Adebowale property. Commissioner Ogundimu's face darkened with rage. You people don't know what you are doing. I can destroy all of you. Then destroy us, said Baba Jimo, the oldest man in the community. But you will have to destroy the whole village to get to this good man's land. For a moment that felt like eternity, Commissioner Ogundimu stared at the wall of ordinary people who had found extraordinary courage. His security forces looked uncertain. They were prepared to intimidate one family, not to massacre an entire community. Then Ogundimu smiled coldly. Very well. You want to protect the farmer. Let's see how long your courage lasts. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Within minutes, two police trucks arrived, disgorging dozens of armed officers. Arrest them all, Ogundimu commanded. Charge them with obstruction of justice, interference with government business, and incitement. The crowd began to disperse as the police advanced, but Kende stepped forward. Wait, he called out to his neighbors. Don't let them arrest you because of me. I will go peacefully. No, Baba Kehinde, Mama Folake said firmly. We have started this together. We'll finish it together. But even as she spoke, fear was winning. One by one, people began to back away. They had families to protect, jobs to keep, lives to preserve. Within an hour, only Kehinde and his injured son stood between Commissioner Ogundimu and 12 acres of prime farmland. Now, Ogundimu said with satisfaction, let's try this again. The bulldozers roared to life, and this time, nothing stood in their way. Kehinde and Tunde were forced to watch as 4 generations of their family's legacy was reduced to rubble in less than 3 hours. The house where Tunde had been born, the barn where they stored their harvests, the irrigation system that had taken decades to perfect, the mango tree where Kehinde had proposed to his late wife, all of it gone. As the sun set over the devastation, Commissioner Ogundimu walked up to the father and son, who stood amid the wreckage like survivors of the war. Here is your compensation, he said, dropping an envelope at Kehinde's feet. 2 million naira as promised. Use it wisely. It is more money than a man like you deserves. Kehinde bent slowly to pick up the envelope, his movements those of a man aged decades in a single day. You think you have won, he said quietly. looking directly into Ogundimu's eyes. But victory built on evil never lasts. Ogundimu stepped closer, his voice dripping to a whisper that only Kende and Tunde could hear. Old man, I have crushed better people than you without breaking a sweat. You and your son are nothing. You will always be nothing, and in 5 years, no one will even remember your names. He turned to Tunde, whose young face was streaked with tears of rage and helplessness. As for you, university boy, let this be a lesson about the real world. Education means nothing without power. Intelligence means nothing without connections. You can spend the rest of your life hating me, but you will never be able to touch me. That night, Kendi and Tune slept under the stars on what had once been their front yard. They had nowhere else to go. In the darkness, Kendi whispered to his son, promise me something, Tunde. What, Bami? Promise me you will use this pain to become something greater. Promise me that someday, somehow, you will make sure no other family suffers what we have suffered tonight. Tunde looked up at the stars, his father's words burning into his soul like a brand. I promise, Bami, and I promise something else. Commissioner Ogundimu will answer for what he has done. If it takes me the rest of my life, he will answer. Neither of them could have imagined that it would take exactly 23 years or that the answer would come in a way that would shake the entire political structure of their states. The months that followed the destruction of their farm were the darkest in both men's lives. With the pitiful small compensation money, Kende rented a tiny room in town and tried to start over. But a man in his 60s, broken in spirit and health, found it nearly impossible to rebuild from nothing. He took odd jobs, sweeping floors, carrying loads, anything that would put food on the table. The proud farmer who had once employed others was now grateful for any work he could find. Tunde's university education hung by a thread. Without the farm's income, they couldn't afford his fees. He took part-time jobs, tutoring younger students and cleaning offices, sleeping only 4 hours a night to keep up with his studies. But something had changed in the young man. The beating, the destruction of his family's legacy, his father's broken spirit, all of it had forged him into something harder and more determined than before. He began spending every free moment studying not just agriculture but politics, law, and governance. He read every book he could find about political corruption and how to fight it. He memorized the names and histories of every successful politician in Nigeria, looking for patterns, strategies, and weaknesses. His classmates thought he had lost his mind. Tunde, why are you obsessing over politics? His roommate asked one night. Find him poring over old newspapers at 2 a.m. Focus on your agricultural studies. Get a good job with one of the big companies. Tunde looked up, his eyes burning with an intensity that made his friend take a step back. Because politics destroyed my family, he said quietly, and politics is the only thing powerful enough to fix what was broken. Meanwhile, Commissioner Ogundimu was enjoying the fruits of his corruption. The Adebowale farm had been sold to a Chinese development company for 200 million naira, 4 times what it was actually worth. Ogundimu's share of the inflated deal was 80 million naira. He bought a new mansion in Abuja, enrolled his children in expensive private schools abroad, and began eyeing even bigger opportunities for graft. The agricultural processing plant that was supposed to justify the land seizure was never built. The Chinese company simply held the land as an investment, letting it sit idle while they waited for property values to rise. Ogundimu had moved on to other schemes, other victims. He had forgotten about the farmer and his son entirely, but the farmer and his son had not forgotten about him. 1 year after losing their land, Kende's health began to fail. The stress and heartbreak had taken their toll on his body. He developed heart problems and diabetes, conditions made worse by their inability to afford proper medical care. Tunde graduated from university with first class honors, but instead of celebrating, he spent his graduation day in the hospital, watching his father struggle to breathe. I'm sorry, my son, Kehinde whispered, his voice weak but his eyes still bright with love. I failed you. I couldn't protect our family's legacy. No, Bami, Tunde said, gripping his father's frail hand. You taught me everything I need to know. You showed me that some things are worth fighting for, even when you know you might lose. Kehinde smiled. What will you do now? You could get a job in Lagos or Abuja, start fresh, build a new life. Tunde was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that would have shocked his father if he had understood its full implications. I'm going into politics, Bami. Kende's eyes widened. Politics? But politics is what destroyed us. Exactly, Tunde said. Bad people went into politics and gained the power to hurt good people. The only way to stop them is for good people to gain even more power. But how? We have no money, no connections, no family name. Tunde's jaw set with determination. Then I will build all those things. I will start from the bottom and work my way up. And someday, Bami, I will have enough power to protect families like ours. Kehinde studied his son's face and saw something that both thrilled and frightened him. The look of a man who had found his purpose in life. It will take years, Kehinde said. Decades, maybe. I have time, Tunde replied, and I have something more important than time. I have a reason. Kehinde passed away 3 months later on a rainy Tuesday morning in November. His last words to his son were, remember our land, Tunde. Remember what they took from us, and remember that justice delayed is not justice denied. At the funeral, only 12 people attended. Commissioner Ogundimu was not among them. He had no idea that the man whose life he had destroyed was dead. But as they lowered Kehinde's coffin into the ground, his son made a vow that would reshape the political landscape of an entire state. I will remember, Bami, and someday everyone will remember too. 22 years later, that someday finally arrived. Commissioner Ogunimu stood in the community hall, sweat dripping down his face as hundreds of pairs of eyes stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed hostility. Where is he? Ogundimu demanded again, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. Where is this governor who thinks he can drag me to some village hall like a common criminal? The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and a figure emerged from the back of the hall. Tall, dignified, wearing a simple white senator's outfit. The man walked with the measured pace of someone who had learned patience through decades of struggle. As he stepped into the light, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some recognized him from television and newspapers. The new governor who had shocked the political establishment by winning the election as an independent candidate with no party backing. But others, the older ones who had lived in the community for decades, began to whisper a different kind of recognition. Is that it can't be the boy, Kende's boy? Commissioner Ogundimu stared at the approaching figure, his mind racing. There was something familiar about the man's face, something that tugged at memories he had buried and forgotten. The governor stood 10 feet away and looked directly into Ogundimu's eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of absolute power, power that had been earned, not inherited. Hello, Commissioner. My name is Governor Tunde Adebowale, but you knew me by a different name once. The color drained from Ogunimu's face as the pieces began falling into place. You knew me as a university boy, the son of the farmer whose land you stole 23 years ago. The community hall erupted. Voices rose in amazement, disbelief, and growing excitement as people realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. That's impossible, Ogundimu stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. You were nobody. You had nothing. You disappeared after you destroyed my family. Tunde's voice remained calm, but underneath lay the steel that had carried him through 2 decades of struggle. After you broke my father's heart and left us homeless, after you had me beaten by your thugs for daring to question your corruption, Ogundimu's legs began to shake. Around him, his security detail looked confused and frightened. They had signed up to protect a powerful commissioner, not to witness his public destruction. I didn't disappear, Commissioner, Tunde continued, beginning to walk slowly around the frozen man like a predator circling prey. I went to work. I finished my university degree despite everything you did to my family. I got a job with an international development organization. I spent 5 years in rural communities across West Africa, learning how governance really works. The crowd hung on every word, sensing that they were witnessing something that would be talked about for generations. Then, I came back to Nigeria and started at the bottom of the political ladder: local government council, state house of assembly, federal house of representatives. 22 years of climbing, Commissioner. 22 years of building the power base you said I could never have. Tunde stopped directly in front of Ogundimu, close enough that the older man could see the fire that still burned in his eyes. The same fire that had glowed in the beaten 17-year-old boy all those years ago. And do you know what kept me going through every setback, every defeat, every moment when I wanted to give up? The memory of my father's face the day you destroyed our farm, the promise I made at his grave, the knowledge that someday I would have enough power to make you answer for what you did. Ogundimu tried to speak, but only a strangled whisper emerged. This can be happening. Oh, but it is. Tunde smiled, not with warmth, but with the satisfaction of a man who had waited more than 2 decades for this moment. You see, Commissioner, you made one crucial mistake 23 years ago. What mistake? The words came out as a croak. You assumed that because you had power and I didn't, that equation would never change. You thought power was permanent, unchangeable, but you forgot the most important truth about power, Commissioner. Tunde leaned in closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But in the dead silence of the hall, every word carried to the back row. Real power isn't taken by force, it is earned through service, it is built through trust, it is sustained through integrity, and it is wielded not for personal gain but for justice. He straightened up and addressed the crowd, his voice now carrying the full authority of his office. People of Ogbomoso, you remember Baba Kehinde, don't you? The farmer who gave free food to widows during hard times. The man who opened his wells to neighbors during droughts. The father who worked 16-hour days to send his son to university. Murmurs of recognition and growing anger rippled through the crowd. Many of these people had indeed known and benefited from Kehinde's generosity. This man, Tunde pointed at the trembling commissioner, destroyed all of that. He seized our family land under false pretense, paid us a fraction of its worth, and sold it to foreign investors for massive personal profits. The agricultural processing plant he promised, it was never built. The community development he claimed would benefit you all, it's never happened. The crowd's murmurs turned to angry voices. People began shouting, "We remember Baba Kehinde. This man is a thief. Where is our development project?" But Tunde raised his hand for silence, and the crowd immediately quieted. This was the kind of natural authority that couldn't be bought or inherited. But I didn't bring Commissioner Gundimu here for you to judge him, Tunde said, his voice carrying a surprising note of mercy. I brought him here to give him something he never gave my father. Ogundimu looked up with desperate hope. What do you mean? A choice. Tunde walked to a table that had been set up at the front of the hall. On it were several thick folders and a laptop computer. Commissioner, for the past 5 years, since I became a federal legislator, I've been building a case against you, not just for what you did to my family, but for everything you have done. He opened the first folder, revealing photographs and bank statements. The Adebowale farm was just the beginning, wasn't it? In the past 23 years, you have illegally seized 47 properties across the state. You have displaced 312 families. You have stolen an estimated 2.8 billion naira from the state treasury through fraudulent land deals. Ogundimu's face went from pale to green. How did you How did I get this information? Tunde smiled grimly. Commissioner, you have been stealing for so long you forgot that records exist. Bank transfers leave traces. Witnesses remember, and when you are governor, people who were too afraid to speak before suddenly find their courage. He opened the laptop and turned the screen toward the crowd. These are the bank accounts where you have been hiding stolen money. Accounts in Dubai, London, and Switzerland. This is the evidence that will send you to prison for the rest of your life. The crowd gasped as they saw the astronomical figures on the screen. Billions of naira that should have been used for schools, hospitals, roads, and development projects. But here is what makes this really interesting. Tunde continued, clicking to another screen. 3 days ago, I signed an executive order freezing all these accounts. Every naira you stole over the past 2 decades is now locked away, pending the outcome of your trial. Ogundimu's knees buckled, and he would have fallen if his security men hadn't caught him. I am finished, he whispered. You have destroyed me. No, Commissioner, Tunde said quietly. I haven't destroyed you. I have simply given you the same choice you gave my father 23 years ago. Tunde pulled out a chair and gestured for Ogundimu to sit. The once powerful commissioner collapsed into it like a broken man. 23 years ago, you told my father he could accept your insulting compensation or lose everything. Today, I am offering you a similar choice, but with one crucial difference. He sat down across from Ogundimu, their faces now level, their eyes locked. Choice number one: I turn all of this evidence over to the EFCC tomorrow morning. You will be arrested, tried, and convicted. You will spend the rest of your life in prison. Your family will lose everything: your houses, your cars, your children's school fees, everything. They will live with the shame of your crimes forever. Ogundimu was crying now, tears streaming down his face as he realized the magnitude of his downfall. Or choice number two, Tunde continued, his voice softening slightly. You make full restitution. Every family you displaced gets proper compensation, not the insulting amounts you gave them, but fair market value. Every naira you stole goes back to the state treasury. You resign from all government positions and retire from public life permanently. Hope flickered in Ogundimu's eyes. And then, what happens to me? Then you get to go home to your family. You get to live quietly as a private citizen. You get to spend your remaining years trying to make peace with what you have done. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word of this extraordinary negotiation. But understand this, Tunde's voice hardened again. This offer expires in exactly 24 hours. If you don't accept it by tomorrow at sunset, choice number one automatically takes effect. And unlike you, Commissioner, when I make a promise, I keep it. Ogundimu looked around the hall at the hundreds of faces staring at him. These were people whose lives he had touched through his corruption, farmers whose lands he had seized, contractors he had cheated, families whose children couldn't go to school because development money had gone into his pockets. Why? He whispered, after everything I did to you, why are you giving me this chance? Tunde stood up slowly, his full height casting a shadow over the broken man. Because 23 years ago, a good man raised me to believe that mercy is stronger than revenge. Because my father taught me that the purpose of power is to protect people, not to destroy them. And because I want to honor his memory by being the kind of leader he would have been proud of. He paused, looking around the hall at his people. But mostly, Commissioner, I am giving you this choice because I am not you. I am not the kind of man who destroys families for personal gain. I am the kind of man who builds communities, protects the vulnerable, and uses power to create justice, not chaos. The next 24 hours were the longest in Commissioner Gundimu's life. He sat in his mansion, soon to be seized by the government, staring as legal documents his lawyers had drawn up: full confession, complete restitution, resignation from all positions. His wife and children surrounded him, some crying, others angry, all of them finally understanding the true cost of his years of corruption. Dad, his youngest daughter asked, are we going to be okay? Ogundimu looked at her, really looked at her, and saw innocence he had forgotten existed. For 23 years, he had justified his stealing by claiming it was all for his family. But what kind of family had it built on the foundation of other people's suffering? At sunset the next day, Commissioner Ogundimu returned to the community hall. This time, he came alone. The same crowd had gathered, but the atmosphere was different. Instead of angry shouting, there was a sense of expectation, of history being made. Governor Tunde Adebowale sat in the same chair as the day before, calm and patient. Commissioner, he said simply, "What is your decision?" Ogundimu reached into his briefcase and pulled out the confession documents, signed and notarized. "I accept your terms," he said, his voice barely audible. "I will make full restitution. I will return every stolen naira. I will compensate every family I wronged." He looked up, meeting Tunde's eyes for the first time. And I want to say something else. 23 years ago, I told you that you were nobody, that you would never amount to anything. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. His voice grew stronger as he continued. "You became everything I pretended to be but never was. You gained real power through service, not corruption. You earned respect through integrity, not fear. And today, you have shown me more mercy than I ever showed anyone." The hall was completely silent as the broken commissioner stood up slowly. "To the people of this community," he said, turning to address the crowd, "I am sorry. I stole from you. I hurt your families. I betrayed the trust you placed in government. I cannot undo the damage I have done, but I will spend whatever time I have left trying to make amends." He turned back to Governor Tunde. "And to you, Governor Adebowale, son of Baba Kehinde, I can only say this. Your father would be proud of the man you have become. You have honored his memory in ways I never honored mine." 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. The 2.8 billion naira recovered from Ogundimu's accounts funded the construction of 12 new schools, 3 hospitals, and a modern agricultural center that will serve farmers across the region. Every family that had been displaced by illegal land seizures received full compensation and, in many cases, better replacement properties. The original Adebowale farmland was purchased back from the Chinese investors and converted into a cooperative farm that served as a model for sustainable agriculture throughout West Africa. A statue of Baba Kehinde stood at its entrance with an inscription: "A man's true wealth is measured not by what he accumulates, but what he gives away." Former Commissioner Ogundimu lived quietly in a small house in Ibadan, working as a volunteer at a local charity that helped displaced families. He had kept his word. Every stolen naira had been returned. Every family compensated. His own family struggled with the adjustment from wealth to middle class life. But slowly, they began to understand that their father's redemption was worth more than his stolen millions. Governor Tunde Adebowale went on to serve 2 terms, transforming the state into a model of good governance and rural development. He never married. He said his true love was service to his people. On the anniversary of his father's death each year, he would visit the grave and give the same report. "Bami, I remembered our land. I remember what they took from us, and I made sure that justice came home." But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the community itself. The story of the poor farmer's son who became governor spread across Nigeria and throughout Africa, inspiring a new generation of young people to believe that integrity and perseverance could triumph over corruption and power. Years later, when people asked Governor Adebowale about the secret to his success, he would always give the same answer. My father taught me that the land doesn't just feed the body, it feeds the soul, the family, and the future. But I learned something more. When you plant seeds of justice, the harvest belongs to everyone. And so, the boy who was told he would never amount to anything became the man who changed everything. The farmer who lost his land saw his son reclaim not just their property, but their dignity, their legacy, and their community's future. Commissioner Ogundimu learned that power without conscience is ultimately powerless, while Tunde Adebowale proved that conscience with patience becomes the most powerful force of all. This is why they say the tree that will grow tall must sink deep roots. Tunde's roots were planted in his father's values, watered by his tears, and strengthened by his struggles. When he finally grew tall enough to reach the highest office in the land, those roots ensured he would never forget where he came from or whom he served. Sometimes, justice takes 23 years to arrive, but when it comes completely. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification bell for more inspiring stories.